Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Let me introduce John. John has 4 decades of practice and study in the Zen, Theravada, and Advaita traditions, and was formally asked to teach by Adyashanti in 2002. He's a contemporary non-dual spiritual teacher who offers a compassionate, heart-centered approach to awakening. In addition to his work as a spiritual teacher, John is also an experienced healer and teacher of somatic embodiment. He has extensive training in Alexander technique, Qigong, and zero balancing. And he's the author of a book called Ordinary Freedom and the Unbelievable Happiness of What It Is. So
there's 2 books. Those are two different books.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, the first one was Ordinary Freedom, and the other one was The Unbelievable Happiness of What Is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the correction. And all right, take it away, John.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I always love coming back to. First of all, I'd like to just give a little bit of background. Some of you who have met me before may have heard a little bit of this, but I'll just do a quick history kind of background, both of my spiritual process and my kind of unfoldment there, and also kind of my history with this group and with being gay and coming out and all that. So that'll be a quick kind of, I'll do that quickly. And then I have a talk that I really want to share with you today that I've been, not a prepared talk, but just certain things I'd really like to share with you today. And I know it's a quick meeting, so I have to track because I can ramble on. Some of you probably know. First of all, I had an awakening in 1969 when I was 16. So it's actually over 5 decades of practice now. And so we need to update that bio. I didn't know what happened to me. I was not religious or spiritual. I didn't find out for years. And it led me to yogic practice, Zen practice, Vipassana practice, mindfulness practice, and eventually the direct path which is awareness of awareness. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, was saying that, my approach is sort of coined as the heart-centered approach to spiritual awakening. So it's really a combination of Zen, emotional healing and integration, awareness of awareness, all kind of combined. I've had over 4 decades of teaching and working with people individually, and I'm learning all the time, just like all of us are learning all the time. I'm learning all the time, becoming more sensitive, and it's an incredible journey at this point. I'll mention later again, but I offer now since COVID's happened, I'm doing all online private work with people all around the world, and also online satsangs and retreats, which have been amazing. And those are usually 2 to 3 Saturdays out of the month. And you're welcome to come. We get about 100 people from around the world. And it's a 2-hour gathering where there's a silent sitting, talk, and then I work with people individually. And it's very powerful. It's very supportive. And you can just go to my website and check it out if you're interested. It's like $20 for 2 hours. So, you'll be throwing away $2 in 2 hours at worst. And have to listen to me more, which is, you can always turn off the sound. Okay. So let's see what else. So the other thing I want to mention is that also in 1969, when I was 16, I came out, and I had, realized I was gay. I started noticing it when I was probably, 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. And I came out to my parents and some close friends. And in 1969, I marched on Polk Street. I grew up on the peninsula in Burlingame. And I marched on Polk Street in 1969 with 100 other people for gay liberation. And that march the following year became the Gay Freedom Parade. And then eventually when I think after I'd moved back from Tassajara, I think it was I moved back in 1979, and I was Baker Roshi's, who was the abbot of Zen Center at the time. I was his assistant for a couple of years. And I think in 1980, myself, Isan Dorsey, who I knew as Tommy back then, I don't know if he'd been ordained yet and was Isan yet. Isan, who founded the Hartford Street Zen Center and so forth. He and I and another friend, Billy Graham, who was I think he was the founding Mother Superior of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and also was a TM practitioner, Transcendental Meditation, singer. He was a great guy. The three of us founded Maitri, which was the first gay Buddhist group. And I believe this group is an offshoot of that. I don't know how it all ended up splintering over the years, but we used to meet at the Zen Center's guest house, which is across the street from the Zen Center, a block from here. And we used to have speakers and so forth. And I think eventually we started, I think the AIDS hospice started there, the Maitri AIDS hospice, I'm pretty sure started there in the guest house. And then Isan Dorsey, got the place on Hartford Street and started the Hartford Street Zen Center. And he and Phil Whalen and other friends, I think they brought in the Maitri, the AIDS hospice there. I'm pretty sure that was happening there. So that's just a little bit of history, so you know my background. That's a lot to sort of lay on you all at once. But I just thought it'd be good for you to know a little bit about my background in case you didn't know me. Okay, got that out. So what I'd like to invite you, my work is very experiential, actually. It's not really geared towards building beliefs or concepts or even ideas about practice. It's more a kind of hands-on, direct approach to really learning how to pay attention in such a way that if the natural emergence of what we call true nature, awakened consciousness presence is happening in you, it's going to be facilitated by how I support people, and also by a kind of presence that's here that you may or may not be aware of. What I like to say is that, people might say, well, how do I know if I have an authentic emergence of awakening, if that's really my calling or if it's really happening for me? And I'd say, if you have a questioning mind that's really experiences the existential angst of what is the meaning of life, not just some intellectual curiosity like an interesting philosophy topic, which is fine. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying, if you have more the kind of, what am I doing here and what's the point? And that kind of is really churning in you, which was churning in me when I was 16, actually. That's probably an indication that you have the natural emergence of presence moving through you, and it will naturally bring you to places like this, to teachings, teachers, practices, and so forth. And this is really what I want to talk about today, was what is practice truly, and what is our responsibility and relationship to that process? Because I think those attitudes are probably more important than anything, because we can often get in the way of a natural unfoldment in us with the beliefs we have or things we've heard or learned about how it's supposed to be, what we've read, what someone else has told you, and so forth. So a lot of my work really supports the individual in really tuning into themselves in a way that isn't based on belief, but really based on discovery. And that inner discovery is built into what we are in the life force itself. And if you tune into that deeply, it will guide you to emotional healing and spiritual liberation naturally. So what a lot of people don't understand is that, practice is actually the refinement of attention to what is. It is not the attempt to get an outcome. It is never an end game focus. If that's going on, that's an ego desire to get an outcome. I want to be enlightened. I want to be free of suffering. That's fine. You feel that, you express it. That's the emotional part of our human work, right? Very important. So that's not, that charge isn't electrifying your system, and you can clear that. So you do your therapeutic emotional clearing work. You don't just bypass it with following your breath or tuning into presence. That creates a kind of spiritual, almost dissociated identity. Okay. And there's a lot of problems with that, which I won't go into, because when you truly access presence, this connectedness, it literally is power. And it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just power. And it can be used in many ways, as we well know. So this is where you need to be careful in understanding what you're tapping into, honestly. And be careful about the beliefs that you create about it as well. This is why having a questioning mind is essential, because ultimately the realm of freedom is the realm of the unknown. The realm of freedom is free of a personal self that knows anything about anything. So the example I like to use, if people wonder about this, is, so in other words, I hope I'm not talking too fast, but I feel like we've got limited time, and I want to give you as much as I can in a short period of time so we have time for questions, sitting together, and so forth. So forgive me if I'm like going a mile a minute. If we had 2 hours, I could calm down, and I could just gently, easily schmooze, and, we could just hang out, and it could be easy. But we're on a time frame, so I'm going to try to get to the train on time. Forgive me. I'll have some hot water. Okay. Take a breath and relax. Okay. See, I've got a lot I want to share with you. I always, because my spiritual process and my sexuality and all of that were happening at the same time, like Chris was saying, I remember you, Chris. Good to see you, by the way. Yeah, it's great to see you. I was approached by the Harvey Milk Institute to do classes for them in meditation, and I started doing that. And some of those people started my regular groups and then asked me to start teaching retreats. All the work I'm doing and have done for the last, I don't know how long, I never did any, people asked me to do it. So that's what's been happening for the last long time, 4 decades. And so I'm constantly discovering, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly becoming more sensitive. I'm turning 68 this week, and even though my body's got its challenges, whatever, but I have never felt more alive, more vibrant, more fulfilled, more at peace in my whole life, honestly. And so, and I see people around me who've been with me for years, and they come and they're like a walking basket case, and I can't believe the transformation. It's not me. It's not a personal thing at all. It's really this truth that we all are, that we tune into and surrender to, and really allow to heal us and transform us. And I am just so grateful to be a part of this community of all of us around the world who are literally cultivating consciousness in all the ways that we are. So I really want to tell you how grateful I am that you're here, how much I appreciate and understand how hard it is to do meditation practice, to face oneself, to face one's dark side, to turn towards what's difficult, as we used to say in Zen, and to learn how to be healed and transformed. So it's so important to have patience. It's so important to have a proper perspective. That's really what I want to give you today. It's so important to have permission to be an imperfect human being. It's so important to have compassion towards one's own suffering and other suffering. It's so important to have, I'm getting emotional, forgiveness, and to not get caught in perfectionist ideals of spirituality, which really create a kind of almost fascist mentality. Yeah. Okay. So what is practice? So practice is actually the refinement, the continual repetitive refinement of attention to what is. That's all. It's simply bringing your attention back. So if you learn Zazen, or if you learn mindfulness practices and all those, which I did for decades, And I'm very familiar with that training and taught Zen meditation, taught mindfulness and Vipassana meditation for decades. You bring and did retreats for, that was my life for many decades. You continually bring yourself back. You continually bring your attention back, don't you? So it's really an art. It's a science and it's a craft. And it's never about getting an outcome. Remember that. So if you have that, well, I sit down and I didn't feel any better after my meditation. It was a waste of time. Or my mind wouldn't stop going. It was completely insane and I can't meditate. Right. So there's all of these, there's all the stuff that comes up in when we stop and pay attention. So I understand all that. I know how to respond to all that in a way that can really continue to support your deepening of understanding and experience. So that's important to know. It's the refinement of attention to what is. It's not about getting an outcome. Why? Because awakening or enlightenment, which you may be seeking, you may not be, you may not care, you may just be interested in, meditation as a therapeutic modality or a lowering of stress, lowering your blood pressure, a health thing. That's fine. But there are those of us who, let's just say, went for gold or wanted to go for gold, wanted to go for the finish, whatever that was, it doesn't matter. It's the emergence of that, the natural emergence of awakened consciousness is completely natural. It's as natural as, the sperm and the egg coming together and turning into you and me. Like, you didn't do that. You didn't go into the laboratory and say, okay, now how am I going to invent a human brain? How am I going to make the sun rise? This sounds crazy, but the truth is the way we think about transformation and healing often is in that framework, like somehow, I'm responsible for getting enlightened. Well, I'm not getting anywhere in my practice, so I must not be meditating enough. I'm not committed enough. And these are things I hear all the time when I'm working with people. This is the wrong karma, the wrong path, the wrong teaching, the wrong teacher, the wrong whatever. Or I'm just, or the opposite. I am getting it. That's almost worse, where you actually think you're getting it. And ego grabs a hold of a little bit of insight and goes and puts out a flag and starts getting a following, God forbid. And that also happens. So this is really a very interesting, slippery path, right? And so what I encourage people to be careful of is going down the rabbit hole of meaning. Be careful the conclusions you make, because those may be a way of separating yourself from that which you don't want to feel, you don't want to turn towards. So practice is this incredible opportunity to pay attention to how you've been constructed. There's no blame. Don't blame yourself. So many people have been programmed with shame and guilt. This is where you need to build in forgiveness and realize it's okay to be you. All of us who are gay, this is why I love working with us, because we know damn well that people who told us whatever they told us were full of shit. Let's be honest. We knew how we felt. Look, I was 16 in therapy with a Freudian psychiatrist who, or psychologist who my mother sent me to. And not because I was forced to, it's just I decided I wanted to meet with him because I couldn't talk to my parents anymore. And I thought maybe I could talk to this guy. And I don't know how long it was, maybe 6 months I was in therapy. I was in love with my best friend, George, who was straight. I'm sure you've been there. And when I was 16, and I had been in love with him since I was 3. Right. He was really pretty. And I was like obsessed. And so the psychologist said to me, finally, after 6 months, he goes, he thought they were still pathologizing homosexuality then. And he said, it's what do you say to me? It's narcissism. And he said, a man can't love another man. And I abruptly stood up. The wooden floor flew behind me. I yelled out loud to him, you can go fuck yourself. And I walked out the door and slammed the door. And I came home and I told my mother I was done with therapy. Okay. So that's who I am. And I've always been. And so I've never believed anybody. I never followed anybody. I'm not a believer. I'm not a follower. And I actually don't attract those people, thank goodness. I attract people who can think for themselves, who can question authority, and who could discover on their own how to let the truth within them, that is who they are fundamentally, can transform them. So that's who I am, and that's where I'm coming from. So practice at best supports the natural healing and the freedom from the identified self. It supports that process. I guarantee you, whether you practice or not, it's going to happen. I attract people from all over the world, and it's amazing. I don't know how they find me. Young people, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20s, and older, and a lot older, who've had spontaneous awakenings, know nothing about meditation, know nothing about spirituality. And they're having a hell of a time because they're having Kundalini experiences. They can't go to work. They can't get out of bed. They're a total mess. So they haven't had the value of training, meditation training, yogic training, martial art training, whatever, because what's very obvious to me and those friends of mine who are sort of resonating on this frequency is that meditation and these practices were invented by realized people for realized people. It wasn't invented in order to get realized. You don't meditate in order to get realized. That's total crap. That's why in Zen teaching, the koans, well, I don't know, Basho or whoever's sitting there, and, the teacher comes over, he goes, what are you doing? He goes, I'm meditating. He goes, why are you meditating? He says, I want to get enlightened. He goes, you can't get enlightened by meditating. People go, well, why am I meditating? Right? So that's an ancient koan. It won't get you there because you are already here. That's the point. But that's not some groovy, be here now, platitude. It's the description of reality when you become free on those moments. And I'm sure many of you have tasted this, when you're free of your personal self, when you're in the zone, so to speak, when you're having peak experience, you're not there. You're totally merged. And it's exhilarating, isn't it? So when you go on a retreat or whatever, and you're sitting and you have this connectedness, you have this taste of freedom or this glimpse of freedom, it's like, well, of course, it's Shangri-La, it's heaven, it's the promised land, it's where you want to get to. And then all of a sudden you find yourself back in the desert, with sand blowing in your face and going, shit, what happened? How do I get back there? Right. And so this is what got me on the path. I had this transformative experience, and it literally changed my whole life. I was a concert violinist. I was going to go to Stanford Medical School, and I ended up becoming a Buddhist monk. I mean, let's just say that some people were wondering, well, what about medical school? What about your violin? And what about, I said, well, I'm sorry, but if I don't do this, I'm going to kill myself. And that was true. I was desperate because I don't know. I think there's a kind of desperation in wanting to become free. Okay. So I think I've made this point. So practice doesn't cause and is not responsible for healing or liberation. If the ego believes that, then the ego is attached to the idea that it's in control. And that's literally one of the many simple algebraic formulas for suffering. Control is suffering. Belief is suffering. Honestly, if it's attached, if it's held on, if it's what it really is, all of control, all of belief ultimately on that level, it's just the human nature wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel secure. There's nothing wrong with that. So you say, hey, you talk to yourself, you say, hey, it's okay to want to feel secure. That's just human nature. So don't try to use spiritual descriptions of perfection, of being and all, to marginalize your human nature. It's essential that you understand, appreciate, and allow your human nature. Otherwise, if you do awaken, you will not get it, you will not be integrated, and you'll actually probably be a dangerous person who could easily hurt a lot of people. And that happens, and that's the story of all the bad authority figures and cult leaders and gurus that we know about, that I have worked with so many students who've, thank God, survived some of those atrocities, and many, many students like that. So I've heard it from the horse's mouth. And this is an area where you need to be careful. You need to be respectful of the power and profound energy that you will be and are tuning into, honestly. Okay. So the other thing to say about authentic practice, and then I'll slow down because I think I've done my download, is that true authentic practice engenders engagement. If you're doing practice and you're bored, that's not practice. If you're doing practice and you don't want to be doing it, well, that could be practice. I'll get to that. How you bring your attention to that and how you work with that would be the difference between whether you're practicing or whether you're just trying to get a result. My brain is going too fast for me. I'm going to slow down. Let's see. So true authentic practice engenders engagement, which means it's like exercise. If you like to exercise, and I do, and as I get older, I've had to adjust what I do because now I can't, I can't run up and down the 3 flights of stairs I live up on, 2 stairs at a time like I used to do when I first moved here 41 years ago into this apartment, right? Sometimes I forget that I can't do that and I do it and I go, oh shit. And I might have to go see my chiropractor, I have to go see my osteopath because my back's out, So, but the energy is there. And so what happens is that, if you exercise in a way that's really supports your system, it's energizing, not enervating. And so like true practice will get you more interested, more fascinated. I somehow had that. I grew up as a concert violinist. I had the training of practice early before I became a Zen student. And when I was living at Tassajara back in the late 70s, and it was, 28 degrees in the meditation hall, there was no insulation, nothing, no electricity, none of that. I don't know what's there now, but there was nothing like that. And I couldn't wait. You had to be in the cushion in the Zendo in the practice period, 3:45 to 4 in the morning. And I'd be up at 3 doing my push-ups, doing my sit-ups, getting my hot water, washing my face before the other 9 guys got into the one bathroom and, going down and getting hot water out of the thing that did the hot water. And I couldn't wait, believe it or not, even though it was all the challenges and difficulties back then. I couldn't do it now at my age, but I was in my early 20s. I couldn't wait to get on my Zafu and find out what I was going to discover. There's that kind of and it was painful and it was hard. It was impossible, but somehow or other what do they call it? Suzuki Roshi call it, I think, a way-seeking mind. You're fascinated by it. So you can develop that if you don't have it. You can become curious and interested in your practice in a way where you bring yourself back. And let's say you're frustrated. I tell people, if you're frustrated, then your practice is working. If you want to run out the door right now, this is working right now. I'm triggered. If I tell people, I tell my students, if I'm not triggering you, it's not working. If you want to run out the door, it means you're cooking. It means something in you is emerging that you don't want to feel. What is it that you're pushing away? Is it your irritation? Is your judgment? Is your comparative mind? Well, he's not as mellow as that last guy we heard a couple of weeks ago. God, how could I possibly trust somebody who's as hyper and God knows what this guy is into? I don't know. Whatever, I don't care really. But it's honestly, notice the projection onto reality that you have. And without blame or judgment, take responsibility for it in a way that actually can bring you to a place where you're more calm, where you're more at peace in yourself, where you're more attuned to the deeper guiding presence that you truly are, that will and does and has for me throughout these 52 years guided me and continues to this day. Okay. Let's sit for a little bit, and then I'll open up questions. So I'll do a little guided meditation, and I just invite you to find a comfortable position, whatever's comfortable for you, where you can sit quietly, without distraction, and as still as possible without tension. So you want to be able to sit in a way that is balanced but not tight and held. So if that means you slump in your couch or lie in your bed, that's fine. Just right now, I want you to be at ease and be comfortable being here physically. Okay? Great. I'm going to hit a little bell to start the meditation, and then I'll do some guidance. And then we'll sit for a bit and I'll do a little bit of guidance in the meditation. And then I'll open it up because I know we have until 10:02. So we got some time. This is perfect. Okay. So here we go. If you're distracted right now or your mind's all over the place, you might want to do some nice full breaths as a way of centering your nervous system. I like to do what I call breathing a sigh of relief, where I just open my mouth, take a full lung breath, and release the exhale with a sigh. Like that. I used to do a few of those, can really clear some excess energy out of the system, begin to settle you down and get you out of your head, get you out of thinking mind, and make it easier for you to come into sensing, feeling body. So if that helps, try a few breaths. And then you might just notice the natural movement of your breath. If you're able to feel it in your belly, below your navel, about 2 inches, that's a beautiful place to be aware of it. That's the hara or the tantien. Just natural breathing there. That's right. Just noticing the in and out. No controlling, no problem. Just let it breathe the way it's breathing. I can already tell as a group you're really tuning in beautifully. So just notice what you're aware of right now. Whether it's thought, feeling, sensation, energy, presence, just notice what's here. That's all. Don't think about it. And notice any doing about it. Be aware of any resistance. Be aware of any trying. Be aware of any figuring out. Be aware of any conclusions. Be aware of any comparisons. Just don't get caught in any of those. Just notice them. Notice any sensations. Come back to just being here. Notice any feelings. Just come back to being, or allowing them in the space of awareness. Allowing the sensations of body. Allowing any feelings to move through. Without getting caught in the meaning of them. Opening to awareness if that's present for you. We'll sit here for a little while in silence. Just allowing what is to be right now. And gently noticing any resistance or avoidance of what is. Allowing opening to open by itself. Allowing sensations to unwind by themselves. Allowing feelings to emerge and release by themselves. So my understanding is that I have to end by 10:02. Is that correct? So I wish we had more time just to sit in silence. Again, I just want to invite you to the satsangs that I offer. That would be a great opportunity to really drop into this a lot more if this is resonating on your frequency. But I think we have, if it's true that I need to be complete by 10 to the hour, then we have about 7 minutes. It's not a lot for maybe a question or two. So if you have a question or just want to sit together a little bit and have me tune in with you is what I do that. Just, raise your hand so I can see you, and I'll pick on you. Or we can keep sitting if nobody has any questions or anything they want to say. We can let the rest of the time together. Oh, looks like Asa. Is that the way to pronounce your name?
My name is Asa.
Asa, I'm sorry.
I am absolutely enthralled and fascinated by what you had to say today.
Oh, thank you.
And find it deeply humorous also. You talked about this desperation of wanting to be free, and I totally get it. You also talked about authentic practice. The frustration means something is cooking.
Right.
Your experience of being in love with George since you were 3 years old and having a therapist, a Freudian therapist tell you a man can't love a man, and flying out of your chair and saying, fuck you, and never coming back is radical. I hear that as a radical statement of the love of yourself and this awareness of your own self-humanity and dignity.
Thank you.
And
exactly. Thank you. That's beautiful. That's very.
Because as an African American man that grew up and became of age in the gay community, and experienced, you can't come into the club because you're black. At Studio.
That upset me so much.
At Studio One in West Hollywood, when I was working as an engineer building aircraft, with an engineering degree, growing out of poverty, and then 4 days after the insurrection, which is basically Confederate flags in Civil War in the heart of the Capitol, in our sacred place. And I heard this guy tell me, he says, I'm a white guy with a PhD from Stanford. He says, I've not chosen to fight racism. I'm wondering, how can you be a white man and say you have not chosen to fight racism, but at the same time embrace at the same time acknowledge white supremacy? And so I flew out of my chair.
I believe you.
But the fascinating thing about it is I'm sitting here with a bunch of gay people, and can you imagine what gay men would say if someone says, that gay stuff. I don't deal with that. Knowing that you're in the grips of.
Well, that's what so many.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, do you want me to respond to that or how?
Please do.
Okay. Well, I honor who you are. And I see all people as equal, period. I've never seen anybody as different. And I'm sorry that's unfortunately a lot of people have that programmed into them. But I would say that in my fortunate unfoldment and having a mother who taught me to trust my feelings and to care about humanity more than economy, that I have always been out, I was marching on the street for civil rights. Back in the 60s, I was marching for anti-Vietnam War, and I was marching for gay liberation. So I've always been an activist. I'm still an activist in this world of what I'm doing and the way that I'm able to be, which is to tell the truth, because that's the number one requirement of being an activist, is to be honest and authentic. And I think if we're able to tell the truth to ourselves in our own practice, which is what I was getting at, that will liberate you. The truth will set you free, not your attempt to be free. But even the relative truth will set you free. And this is why often when people come out, I was working with one of my students who's in his 40s. He's been straight his whole life. He's been with women his whole life. But then he finally realized he came from a religiously fundamentalist pro-Trump family background in upstate New York. And he came out and he's been sick and health problems. He came out to his family, these, pardon me, well, let's just say, fundamentalists in the way that they are. And he's healthy now. He became healthy. And he individuated finally from that. And he's emerging as an empowered, alive, vibrant human being. And it's been amazing to see his transformation. A lot of it was because of what I'm sharing with you today, that he went inside and told himself the truth about what he was feeling. Not it's right, wrong, good, or bad. Screw that. You're the only one who knows what's true. And if you're really aligned, you will know. And that's, even Suzuki Roshi said, and he was speaking, we're almost out of time. I wish I could tell you, but it was that when you're truly aligned with what you truly are, you will be no, I'm going to make it simpler. The purpose of spirituality is to become fully human. And the friend of mine who's been one of the most important teachers and mentors in my whole life has been one of my dearest friends, Brother David Steindl-Rast, who's now 94 years old. He and I met him when I was 20, when I was a monk, and we've been close for 48 years. We just emailed each other the other day. He's sheltering in place in Argentina, staying with friends there. He's, I would say, a realized Christian. But we met in a Buddhist context. He was very close friends with Thomas Merton, and he and Thomas Merton developed the ecumenical dialogue with the Dalai Lama and started the ecumenical dialogue between Christianity and Buddhism. He was on the cutting edge of that. He's one of the and he was the one who told me decades ago, the purpose of spirituality is to become fully human. I sent him a brief YouTube video, a 10-minute video that was just posted recently. I sent it to him and he wrote back, says, John, I don't know if it's okay to say this to you, but I'm proud of you. And I wept because his unconditional love, just not by saying one word about life, he literally embodies it, gave me the experience for the first time in my life of being loved. And I didn't know what that was. Truly unconditionally loved. And that is what we need more than anything. We need that, and we need the truth. And that will bring us into the fullness of our humanity. So I just want to thank you very much. I'm getting really emotional. Thank you very much for being here today and inviting me to share with you my path and my background and what I have to offer. And you are more than welcome to join me. And if you care to, no expectation, no requirement, none of that crap. I really trust your process. I know that your path is what's leading you. It's not what you believe. It's not what somebody told you. So I wish you the best for your health, of course. May you stay healthy and well. And may you find what you truly want to find in this life and be fulfilled in the way you need to be. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. I know I went 1 minute over, but I think I got it done.
Thank you. No worries. Let me post again the link for an information on Dana. Dana is the Pali word for generosity. And so when you contribute to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship, you help us with honorariums for our Dharma speakers, for Zoom payments and rent. And we send out the quarterly newsletter to prisoners. I said last week we just got a donation we just got Dana from one of our prisoners. He received the newsletter. So that was pretty cool. He sent a commissary check of his hard-earned dollars in prison to support GBF. Any other announcements for the good of the group? Okay. So, John, we usually have a dedication of merit that we use, but if you'd like to offer one of your own, you're welcome to, or would you like us?
Yeah, I'd love to give you one, actually.
Okay.
May you be free of suffering. May you be guided through your highest good. May you find and may be brought to you peace, harmony, fulfillment in every way possible in your life. And may you be open and clear to receive this guidance so you can find your way in this mysterious unknown of our existence. And may that guidance truly bring you to fulfillment and happiness and peace.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention next week's speaker. Jerry, do you have it handy?
Kirk Weil will be our speaker next week.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone.
Is the room going to be open?
Yep, it's open.
Okay.
We're open for business.
What happens when you open the room?
Everyone. Well, we're just hanging out. If you have a question or if you want to stay for a little while and entertain questions or...
Sure, I'm happy to, actually.
Fellowship. Did anybody who did not get a chance to speak or raise their hand during the question and answer session want to say something? Clint, are you talking? I can't hear you. Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I was blown away by your talk. Wonderful, wonderful talk. And I appreciate you being a speaker here so we could hear it. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Very, very moving.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor and a privilege to be here with you, honestly. And a joy for me. It's a great pleasure, actually.
So I have a question. How would you counsel the younger you?
Who is that?
This is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Hi. So would you counsel your 16-year-old self in a different way of how to approach that moment with your therapist now, like looking back on it?
No.
Is there a more
No, he got what he deserved, and I needed to move on. No,
okay.
Honestly, no, that's an interesting question.
Challenging just because, he's also a person too caught in illusion. So
yeah, well, I didn't have, I guess, okay, so are you saying if I had, sorry, I've interrupted you. Sorry, Jen. So if you're saying if I could be who I am now at 16, are you saying that?
I'm just saying, no, if you were to counsel your 16-year-old self, not that the calling him out wasn't appropriate on a certain level, but is there a different, more skillful way to have done that? Looking back now from all your years of cultivation.
I honestly don't look back at my life with regret. If I did something that harmed somebody else or was unconscious, then I'm going to learn from that. And I'll look back and do that. But honestly, no. I actually am glad I did what I did because given who I was then, given what was going on then in the world, that's exactly what I needed to do. I needed to not even think about that again because I didn't have a problem with being gay. And I didn't need to convince him of something different. If that's where he lived, I didn't want anything to do with him. It was that simple. So I hear you. And if he was my client, if he was my student, If he was a friend, of course, obviously.
So he's not a human being that you can.
I'm fine with somebody telling. I'm fine with somebody if you felt moved to in a session with me, honestly, Jason, or in a session with me to tell me to go fuck myself, I would welcome it, because that's you expressing your anger. And I think that's healthy. The problem today is people are repressing their emotions, and we have an epidemic of emotion.
I'm not saying that you can't express yourself. I'm just saying that maybe there's a more skillful way than having to say fuck you to someone.
Well, maybe there is.
As an adult who has gone through cultivation of presence and consideration of other, how do you find a more skillful way to do that moment?
Oh, well, okay. So so I'm not really
for an adult response to it, not a 16-year-old.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. Of course, obviously. Well, to be really honest about that, let's say I was having a conversation, let's make it current. If I was having a conversation with somebody who maybe probably does believe that today, right? Because there are people who not only believe that, there are people who think that if you're gay, you're actually going to burn in hell for eternity, right? And I have students and friends who actually were programmed into that kind of believing. So of course there's a skillful way to respond to that. And there's a lot of ways to respond to that. If somebody's open-minded, and maybe that would be the first question I would ask them, I would actually ask them a question. I say, Jack, because that was his name, Jack Schwartz. I said, Jack, how do you know that? Do you really know that's true? Are you gay? Have you experienced what I've gone through? Can you actually presume to tell me what my experience is? Or are you just quoting what you've read in Freudian psychology? And you're basically towing the line of you're a card-carrying Freudian psychologist who believes that homosexuality is a pathology. Is it just because you believe it, or how do you know this is true? That's what I would do. I would throw it back on them.
Yeah.
Sorry that I had to go through what I did to get to this, but
fine. Thank you.
I am very concerned, and it brings up a whole other point that I work with in my work all the time, is that most people, and I had to learn how to not be repressed emotionally, but not release it in a way that's harmful to others. I agree with you, and is not destructive to oneself or others, but isn't repressing it within oneself. That's a lot of the work that I've learned myself, and I work with my students. And so I think that's more what I was reacting to in your comment, was that I knew that if I stuffed that in, it was going to turn into ulcers or cancer or depression. And I thank God that didn't happen. Yeah.
I just wanted to know if there was a more skillful way.
Obviously, as an adult now, of course. I mean, if I were having that conversation with somebody today, of course, I would be curious why they believe that. I would show interest in them and find out about them. That's exactly what I would do. Because I wouldn't have an agenda that they believe something different, because I don't have an agenda that they believe something different. I respect people's limitations, actually. And I know that it's important for us, that for each and everyone to respect our limitations, and that those will slowly, over time, evolve and transform. So I hope that's that's a helpful answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, actually. Appreciate it. So, Jeff.
Would you say then that you don't think there are any situations in which telling someone to go to hell is appropriate?
Well, that was my first answer. I think that what I was saying was that I didn't want to disempower who I was in the past. So the answer to that question is absolutely. And I am somebody who will fight injustice and will stand up, and I will, even though I'm not religious, I'm Jewish, very reformed. I grew up right after World War II. And when Trump showed up, and I'm sorry if some of you were Trump supporters, forgive me, but when I saw him, I smelled Hitler. And because somebody who's got my kind of programming can smell a dictator, can smell a cult leader. And, you got to tell it like it is, as we used to say in the 60s. And so I am very much standing up and speaking out against injustice. And I think as much as possible, I think nonviolence is important. I think doing it in a way, Thich Nhat Hanh was somebody that I knew and I respected. My mom was in the anti-war movement back in the 60s. She met with him. He gave her one of his handwritten little books of poetry, which I actually have. And I was very much a supporter of what he was doing, and his people were being killed in Vietnam because he was nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1972 by Martin Luther King because he was bringing together the North and the South, trying to get them to understand each other. Now, that's the true understanding of our inner process and how transformation happens. That's what I'm teaching, really, experientially. So I think there are some people that are not open to listening to another point of view. So the people who I would call fundamentalists are people who are completely identified with their beliefs and who they are. Those are the people that stormed the Capitol, that they're the ones who actually believe that they're patriots. They actually believe they were doing something for America. Believe it or not, they actually believe that. And so are they going to listen to me? Hell no. Unlikely. I don't think they're saying, yeah, I want to have an ecumenical dialogue. I want to understand your point of view. But until we get more people, more of a balance, and even like we get rid of Fox News or get a different kind of news that a lot of the Americans are listening to that actually gives them a more balanced perspective of facts, things are going to be difficult. And so how we communicate, I agree with you, Jason, how we communicate, how we listen, how we respond is essential. So thank you for your feedback. I appreciate that. And I learned something from you. I really appreciate it. And I'm learning all the time. And I think that's really where, when we can really hear somebody else's experience, you know what that happens? Their heart opens up. It's like, you can't just say, well, Biden, blah, like, well, why are you supporting this? Like, what is it that you think this guy's going to give you? What is it that you're not getting in your life? What is it so that we start to understand and start to learn how to take care of each other? Because I think now, especially with COVID, and more than ever, I hope that we're learning how important we all are to each other, how important we need each other. We really do. And I hope, and I see from my perspective and my work with the countless people that I work with, is that I would say that there's an absolute emergence of consciousness happening in the species, that we are evolving in consciousness as a species. Whether we survive or not is questionable, but I absolutely believe we are evolving. And so, yeah, that was a long answer. Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think that what we truly want as human beings is to love and be loved unconditionally. There is no greater fulfillment than to be at peace. There is no greater fulfillment than to feel like you don't need anything, that you're actually alive and fulfilled. That's what I was talking about. That true practice, engenders engagement. And this is engagement, right? This is, we're here. We're learning, we're meeting each other. We're facing each other. And so that's everything in my life is relationship and learning to listen. And I'm married. I've been with my husband for 10 years. My dear friend Adyashanti, if you know him, did our wedding. And, my husband's very different than me. He's very, very sensitive. I'm in your face kind of person. I'm an extroverted introvert. So I've been forced to learn to be more sensitive. I've had to learn to listen in ways that wasn't my background, because in my background, you had to scream to be heard. Because everybody was interrupting everybody and everybody was yelling and screaming. It was a very toxic, volatile, emotional environment. And so, John he's slowly maturing. He's slowly becoming a kinder, more sensitive person. And 68, I feel like as a human being, we have our whole life to continually learn and mature and develop. Spiritually, what I sought did happen and is very much a part of my life, and I'm grateful for that. But it didn't make John a perfect guy. It made John more aware of a lot of things, and continues to. So that's the real blessing. That's what Brother David meant. He said the purpose of spirituality is to become a human being. That's why in the Zen ox herding pictures, if you've seen those, the first part of the path is going up to the mountaintop. The second part of the path is coming back to the marketplace. And that's what I'm teaching, is how to be in the marketplace. First, how to get to the mountaintop, and then how to be in the marketplace. That's the whole journey. And that's what our life is. So I'm learning all the time. I have never been more engaged. I have never been more fulfilled. I have never been more wanting to be alive. And I've also never been more at peace. So it's all here at the same time, honestly.
Lama Rod said that sometimes Dharma isn't pretty.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, it's very important. It's so hard. And I encourage people to tell the truth about hardness. I love it when people say, I can't meditate. I hate meditation. I go, oh, great. Thank you for saying that. Because, half the people in the room are feeling that. To actually be present and sit still, that's pretty hard. And the process of learning is, the true evolution of transformation is literally nothing less than the breaking through of the paradigm of our insecurity, that a lot of what keeps us held in as an identity is the need to be in control and to survive. So as we're evolving in consciousness, that paradigm starts to get broken through, and it's very scary and it's very painful all along the way. So it's very important to be told the truth about that and to trust that and recognize it. Otherwise, one may still try to stay in control with in a lot of different ways. So we learn to allow vulnerability. We learn to. Hi, Mark. Mark.
Hi there. Hi. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out how I want to say what I want to say, so kind of bear with me. But there is, and I've been focusing a lot on right speech in my own practice, and the notion of standing up for being expressed, is being yourself and standing up for justice, like you described in yourself, and so forth. So the question I guess the issue I'm raising is, when is the right time to do it? How do you do it? Where do you do it?
Well, of course.
And may I complete? May I finish, please? And that is that it is, for me, at times, I'm just describing my own projection onto others, it can feel like an entitlement. I'm aggrieved. Therefore, I can speak however I please, wherever I please, how often I please, in the tone I please. And that's the piece I sometimes have some issue with. You can tell that because you can hear the motion of my voice. And so I think the thing that I sometimes I straddle is, when it is that I raise my voice, fuck you, not you personally. I'm talking about you're back when you were a child at 16 years old. So the thing is, how do you do that? And I so appreciate what Jason was saying earlier, because I think, at least in my path, is how to be skillful about these things. I appreciate, I appreciate your bringing that into your conversation. But anyway, those are some of the thoughts that I had. And
I think it
resonates with me because I'm the way I'm speaking. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I thank you for bringing it into that frame. When Jason first brought up, it hadn't clicked yet, and understanding where he was coming from and understanding where we were going. But I totally agree with you. And I totally agree with Jason, actually, 100%, I'm not 16 anymore. And so, but I also think it's important to give ourselves permission to make mistakes and to be willing to take criticism and feedback. I think it's very, very important. I invite people, to give me criticism or give me feedback. And because I know I'm anything but perfect, and I can say things that are harmful inadvertently and unconsciously. And I know that my friends and people who love me are going to tell me. And so otherwise it gets in the way. So I think I agree with you that the number one goal for all of us is how we communicate. And so much of what I was trying to share in the talk I was giving was how we communicate with ourselves internally in our journey is essential. So that's why that's exactly right. So of course, compassion, forgiveness, permission, and not being right, not making conclusions. Of course, these are all really, really important. Is there a time to speak out? Yeah, I guess that's a great question today. I don't know when it's skillful and when it isn't. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that, honestly. I'm not out in the street yelling anymore. I was young when I was doing that. And I realized in the peace movement of the 60s that if I couldn't find peace in here, how could I possibly create it out there? So I went in. That's what happened. Grisha?
Thank you. It's Grisha. Thank you. And I appreciate all this. This is a great talk, and I really appreciate what everyone's saying. And I tried to take the practice into take it out into the real world. Last week's teacher, I think it was, who said, speak up, share your perspective, and then but don't expect it to change. Like you're saying, like don't have an end game. Like share your perspective, but don't expect to persuade someone. And he actually said, like, his personal experience was like, just say it once. And then, because you're not going to persuade the unpersuadable, just like you're saying, like, I'm not going to, one conversation, I'm not going to turn a Trumper into a liberal. So, I went to our principal with like this, we were having an issue at work in our union. I spoke up first from our union perspective with our principal, and I said very kindly and compassionately and almost tearfully what we were going through, what our perspective was. And he just, he heard us and didn't change anything. So, then everybody else is like, fuck it, like they're ready to revolt, and we are doing like a union, action. But yeah, it's always that fine line between like speaking up, stepping up, and then like not just like that. The thing I've always heard, like an expectation is a premeditated resentment. It's like if I expect you to change your whole view because of something I said, then
I would love to respond to that. Thank you so much. I just realized that what I was trying to say, and there's two levels here that I was really talking about. I think what I'm trying to say, it's so important to let the movement of that anger and rage move through you in a way that's not harmful to yourself or others. Whether you speak it out or express it, that's a whole different subject. I'm somebody who's teaches self-healing, and the problem that most people have is that they've learned to repress their feelings. Yes. Is it appropriate to repress it toward your boss? Yes. Is it appropriate to hold back something like that in a context that's not appropriate? Of course. But then do you just stuff it? Or do you find a place in your own inner work, whether it's with your therapist or in your meditation or your own inner healing work, where you can vent that, where you can express it so that energy doesn't stay stuck in your system and you don't hurt yourself or anybody else? I think emotional healing work is essential. And that's what I was more responding to with Jason, because this is where I see so many people's stuckness on their path, is that they can have a certain degree of awakening or insight, but because they haven't been able to allow deeper levels of trauma to come up and be released and integrated in them, they still feel separate. They still feel disconnected. So this is why I emphasize this in my work, that actually, from my perspective, understanding self-healing or true emotional healing, self-healing, is no different than the process of supporting realization. They're identical. But I agree. Is there a time and place? Absolutely. Is there skillful means in communicating? Totally. I am trying to learn how to be a better communicator and a better listener, even though you can tell I interrupt occasionally. I'm sorry.
Can I say something? I really apologize for interrupting.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind being. Well, sometimes okay. I do. No, I don't mind.
I guess I'm swimming against the current. But you were a 16-year-old kid with this big authority figure, supported by all of society and possibly your parents too.
No,
trying to make you wrong. There is something to be said for fierce energy, and I think it's being dissed right now. I think your response was totally appropriate. There is a time where if you feel like you're being spiritually abused, you have to stand up and push back. And
that was 1969, Jason. That was long before your generation evolved to the level of your understanding. And I don't mean to patronize, but I do think that it was a different time period, honestly. It was. I do think that matters to some degree.
Yeah. So I just want to put in a word for fierce energy. It can be done wrong, and it come out as anger or hate, rather than just pushing back on somebody who's trying to knowingly or unknowingly damage you. And
that's right.
It seems like, okay, I'm going to calm down.
No, I'm with you. I hear you.
It seems like you've been getting we all have different opinions, and that's totally cool. But it seems like you've been getting the message that what you did was inappropriate, and I think it was totally fucking.
I don't hear that message at all. I just am asking. I don't hear from Mark or from Jason a judgment of the 16-year-old's behavior. Then no, I don't hear that at all.
All right.
All I heard was, okay, you've got the perspective you have now. How would you handle this now? And it didn't go in yet. So I was more still responding to who I was in the circumstances then, which is what you're saying, Clint. But no. I think that today, I mean, yeah, I can't say what I'd say to somebody in that position, but it's too much of a mental space for me to try to even conceptualize it. But I would like to simplify it and just simply say that the way I see it, there's as I said, the emotional healing work that we're individually responsible for, and learning how to work with that, and then to learn how to be skillful in speech so that we get the results we're looking for, honestly. So that if you're looking for people to work together and to have teamwork, and I'm a team player. I have a whole team of people that works with me. I love teamwork. I'm much more of a collaborator. I'm not a tell you what to do kind of person. I'm much more of a collaborating kind of person. So I actually am very engaged in communicating with others and listening and finding a way to build what we're building together. That to me is how healthy community develops. And so even in our community here, we're doing it, and I love it. I appreciate it. So I've learned something. I thought, thank you for telling me that. That gives me another perspective on, of course, right speech is important. Of course, how we treat others is essential. One of the things I learned was the meaning of your communication is the response it elicits, not the intention you had behind it. So if you give somebody a compliment and they take it as an insult, it's an insult. And if you try to tell them, no, it was a compliment. No, it was an insult. And so the most important thing to have in this world is a flexible mind, is a flexible way of thinking. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to listen to Jason and hear what he said. I wouldn't be able to listen to Mark and hear what he said. I think having a flexible mind and seeing, there's infinite kinds of perspectives, aren't there? Each and every one of us has a different perspective all the time. That's how amazing the mind is.
Well, I'm just saying, of all the options, how to respond, one of many options is to fiercely hold your ground.
I think there is a place for that, obviously. And so I'm with you.
So I'm all for fierceness. I just was wanting to talk about it because I think we all have that 16-year-old boy inside of us that wants to say, fuck you at certain points in times. But part of this whole Buddhist cultivation for me is asking the question of, how do I actually be an adult and acknowledge my 16-year-old, but also transform that fierce 16-year-old energy into more?
I would say, if I can,
that's what I'm just trying to acknowledge.
I would like to respond to you, Jason. I'd say, whatever way that you manage to do that, the only thing I would say is be sure that how you're doing that isn't repressing and stuffing that energy into your system unconsciously.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm saying I'm wanting to recognize that 16-year-old, but I don't want that 16-year-old boy.
A lot of people.
I don't want him to keep taking him over me. You know what I'm saying?
I understand that.
A lot of us can have, we live in a culture right now of obnoxious, and we have a lot of immature mentalities going on. And so what I'm just trying to do is acknowledge that, okay, we all were like, yeah, that fuck you to that person at 16. But where is that coming from? Is that coming from our 16-year-old self, or is that coming from an adult perspective of like, yeah, I'm going to stay fierce, but I'm going to do that in a way that's appropriate?
Right. I understand that. And I agree with that. All I'm saying is that when, instead of lashing out at somebody or acting out, as it were, I would say be kind and thoughtful and considerate when you're interacting with that person. And in your own space and time, in a place where you can work on yourself, you get in touch with that feeling, not as an intellectual perspective, because that's going to stuff it in you, but in such a way that that energy can move through your system as energy, not as thought, not as story, not as the content of what you're reacting to at all, but more that energy needs to move through you, because emotion is the natural weather system of the human being. And if we don't let that flow, we end up getting sick.
I guess the challenge is that you don't know me, and I'm actually a very visceral person. So I actually need to be on the opposite end of actually learning how to.
So are you saying that you can, in a healthy way, so are you able to, in a healthy way, channel and move your emotional energy without hurting yourself or out hurting others?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I am working on, because I am already attached to my
come to my class. You'll learn. So this is what we're working on. This This is what I work on all the time. This is exactly the area that I work with people. Absolutely. I'd love to have you. You'd be great. I love your energy. It's great.
I would just say maybe saying fuck you to this therapist was the most kind thing you could do to him. Like maybe he could just step back a little and reevaluate where he's coming from, rather than just be on autopilot outing this stuff. So I think fuck you has an appropriate place at times as the wake-up call to somebody.
He's probably not around anymore to ask him how it impacted him, if he even remembers it happening.
Well, may not, but I think rather than just saying, oh, all right, fine, I'm just going to go somewhere else. That was a wake-up call. And whether you're 16 or whether you're your age right now,
well,
it was a totally appropriate response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ways to say fuck you without saying fuck you. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I think exactly. And I think that I hear you, Jason, and I get where you're coming from, and I get what you want and need. And we don't have the time to have the interaction I'd like to have with you about this more in depth, but I would love to. So if there's any chance where you and I have that, let's let that happen. I need to go, but I'm so glad to
say that. I just want to reference The Women, the movie The Women. So at the end of that, right, the great line is that, there are names for women like you, but they only use that outside of kennel. They don't, that isn't used for outside of kennels. So she's calling them a bitch, right? So we have lost that skillful way of talking that we can actually say "fuck you," but without having to say it in that way.
Okay, I am.
So
if you
close on a very gay note by referencing The Women. So
I'm sure I have. I'm sure I have a lot to learn about being more skillful with how I speak, and I'm always interested in learning how to be more skillful. And I appreciate the ability to learn from you, Jason. Honestly, I mean this sincerely and honestly. And I so appreciate your feedback and input. I'm going to learn from this, honestly. And I hope I get to see you again. It was great to see you guys. I really enjoyed our time together, and I don't know how you close the meeting eventually, but I need to go and take care of other stuff now.
All right.
But
thank you, John.
It's been a real pleasure. Yeah, you guys take great care of yourselves. Lots of love, honestly. Lots of love and happy trails.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.